All right, this is a breaking update. Something has definitely broken. It is the 4-hour barrier in the marathon for my dad, Allan Lombardi. 3 hours, 57 minutes, 52 seconds. We can take a look at his finish right here at the Ventura Marathon. The first time at age 68, Allan Lombardi has broken the 4-hour barrier in the marathon. And we can hear him call his name at the end. Allan Lombardi, you heard it. Congratulations. 3 hours, 57 minutes, 52 seconds. I could not be more proud. He's given this several shots. He's actually qualified for the Boston Marathon and run the Boston Marathon, which is a hell of an accomplishment in the past. And now he's shooting to go to Boston again one of these years, moving to the future. But it was tough to break that 4-hour barrier, and he was able to do it. I actually had a chance to track the Ventura Marathon on my phone, and it was really gratifying to see this. Tracking, and then it's over. You know, you're worried. It's like you're waiting for Apollo 13 to re-enter from the point of blackout, and you're like, okay, I really hope that this clock stops ticking before the 4-hour mark. So I'm sitting there anxiously looking. He was on pace, and he made it. 3 hours, 57 minutes, 52 seconds. So, yes, there is something breaking. And he's a 49ers fan. I still remember, you know, speaking of Allan Lombardi, my dad, my first memory, well, it might be like in my whole life, might be my dad upset, you know, yelling at the TV when the Cowboys were beating the 49ers in the NFC Championship game to finish the 1992 season. They would also lose the NFC Championship game to Dallas the year after that in 1993. I actually don't remember the 49ers winning the Super Bowl in the 94 season. I mean, I watched the game, I watched the tape dozens of times, but for some reason I can remember that loss to the Cowboys, just the general despair of that loss for the 49ers to Dallas, and I can't remember them winning the Super Bowl. Now, my first vivid memory, like remembering essentially the whole game, was 49ers Packers in 1995 when the 49ers lost to Green Bay in the postseason, first of 3 straight postseason losses to the Packers. Anyway, the main point is that Allan Lombardi, who just broke that 4-hour barrier in the marathon, he is a 49ers fan. So it is a 49ers update. It counts. We're also going to be talking about Christian McCaffrey in this update because Christian posted online a post that indicates that he most certainly is back at it for San Francisco. We know, we found out this a couple weeks ago that he had been cleared health-wise to go back and start working out fully again. And now we have this post from Christian McCaffrey. And this is from our SF Niners. They're able to package this. Raj did a great job there with the caption on Instagram at the bottom, but I decided to borrow it. That's McCaffrey locked in the gym. And it just led me to want to put this out there. I think people are sleeping on how good Christian McCaffrey is going to be this next season. And this is a significant development because people are not factoring it in properly for what the 49ers might be able to do in 2025. But I think that the way that Christian McCaffrey exited the game against Buffalo led to a lot of incorrect impressions about his health. He slid down. Remember, he slid down and everybody's like, oh my goodness, non-contact injury. I think the majority of the people who don't follow this, and that probably is the majority of football, majority of people who watch football, who don't follow it religiously, I think that majority probably thinks that Christian McCaffrey tried to give it a go this past season after dealing with the Achilles tendonitis, and then it was just too much and he had to shut it down. Based on the way that slide looked, I mean, it wasn't pretty. Anytime that you see a player just give himself up, you immediately say, ooh, non-contact injury, not good, especially if he had already been dealing with the Achilles. But that wasn't the case for why Christian McCaffrey slid and exited the game. He had fully healed from the bilateral Achilles tendonitis, which sidelined him for about 2 months, which I think is remarkable in and of itself. He talked about having difficulty walking to the bathroom a couple months before he dominated that first quarter against the Buffalo Bills. So people were saying he's not going to come back at all, and Christian McCaffrey came back. And not only did he come back, he returned to 100% by the time of that game against the Bills. The reason that he slid and exited the game was not because the Achilles flared back up. The Achilles was totally fine. It's because his knee slammed the frozen turf in that snow game on what was almost a touchdown. There was a shoestring tackle by the Bills safety Taylor Rapp, and he strained or sprained his PCL. That's the posterior cruciate ligament. That's one of the ligaments in the knee. So that was just bad luck in snowy, icy conditions. And it was the cruelest twist of fate imaginable because McCaffrey had worked so hard to get back. And then he was busting through the middle of the formation for what looked like it was going to be a long touchdown run, which would have been his only touchdown run of the season. And Taylor Rapp just barely tripped him up by a shoestring, and he slammed his knee onto the turf. I think at that point, Christian said it was in denial. He had fought so hard to come back from the Achilles injury. So he said, I'm not hurt. Adrenaline was still coursing through his veins. I'm going to get back out there and run the next play. So he was really just trying to mentally make the injury disappear. I'm sure his knee was already bothering him, but he thought that he could play through it. Football players play through stuff all the time. It's hard to tell in the moment if something is season threatening or not. So he went back out there. He took the next handoff, and he realized as soon as he took the next handoff that the knee wasn't where it needed to be, that he had suffered that terrible luck injury the play before. So he just went into a slide, checked himself out of the game, checked himself out of the season, and had to move on to the next one. But the quicker that we realized that that was a totally separate incident than the Achilles, the sooner we can prognosticate how Christian McCaffrey is going to do in this 2025 season. And I think that he is motivated, and I think he is in line to dominate. The last time that we saw Christian McCaffrey healthy, he posted a season that very well could have won the MVP if it were a fairer race. Lamar Jackson did not deserve to win the most valuable player in 2023. He might have deserved to win it this past year. It was the race between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I know Allen ended up winning. Jackson put up a hell of a better effort or a better season to win that MVP in 2024 than he did in 2023 when he actually won it. In 2023, the two most deserving candidates were Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey, but it's going to be hard to give it to a running back given how this league is constructed. But McCaffrey was absolutely dominant. That's the last time that we saw him healthy for a full stretch. And I think that he's still in his physical prime, 29 years old. And the explosion that we saw from him, not only in 2023, but in 2024, after he had fully recovered and returned from the Achilles injury, was something special. In the snow against Buffalo, I asked Christian about it after the season, and he immediately went back to his childhood. He played so many snow games in the Denver area, so it was like a dream come true for him to play in that kind of blizzard in Buffalo, and boy, was he ready for it. And again, the people who are so dead wrong about Christian McCaffrey just a few weeks before that happened, they need to be called out right now. I'm not afraid to call them out. I will. People were saying he was never going to play again. People were saying there's no way he was coming back that season. People were giving false timelines. It was shoddy reporting because you had fake internet doctors go out without ever having examined Christian McCaffrey and giving their prognosis on when he would return, even though they didn't know what the actual situation was. You had all this misinformation, and then McCaffrey goes out and proves all those people wrong by not only returning in 2024, but returning to pose some dominant, explosive football over the course of that first quarter against the Bills. And then came the really bad luck. And then he was tripped up by a shoestring and he slammed his knee into the frozen turf. And it's just the season that it was. Sometimes shit happens. Sometimes football it's like life. It doesn't go the way that you want it to. And that's the story of the 2024 49ers season with all the adversity that they faced, the waves of it that just kept on punching them. Well, that's what Christian McCaffrey had to deal with. They were shocked. The 49ers were shocked that Christian McCaffrey was unavailable to go in week 1. That was another kind of wrinkle to all this. Everybody thought that McCaffrey and the 49ers knew that he was going to be out and they're somehow hiding it. They didn't know. I mean, he was running around, sprinting around, cutting at training camp just a couple weeks before that week 1 inactivity. And it wasn't until 90 minutes before the game that the public found out. The 49ers didn't find out much sooner that Christian McCaffrey would be unavailable. That Achilles tendonitis flared up at the worst time. It was emblematic of what the 49ers had to deal with. But he then proved so many people wrong by not only returning, but being explosive, showing what he did in the snow. That was really important to Christian. It reminded him of his childhood, growing up in Colorado and Denver, playing some Little League football out there, Pop Warner football out there in the snow. And unfortunately, the adversity punched again, and he was done for the season. But it all leads us to this moment. It all leads us to McCaffrey fully cleared, fully healthy, ready to go again for the 49ers. And I absolutely believe that he is primed for a big year. And I think that people are sleeping on him because they assume that the Achilles is still an issue, and they think that he failed to return from the Achilles this season when, in fact, he did not. Might be easy to think that with just surface level viewing knowledge, but if you dig into what actually happened, the PCL was completely separate from the Achilles injury. Anyway, I wrote about the running back position on State of the 49ers for the San Francisco Standard. The 8-part series just finished up. Look, there's McCaffrey, there is Kyle Juszczyk, and we delve into a lot in this series. We'll toss the link into the description for this. But first, I think we have to go down here to the running back efficiency in the pass game, because this is what I think is truly mandatory for the 49ers offense to operate at an elite level. Roger Craig did it for the 49ers throughout the 1980s. It was really important for Bill Walsh to have a running back who could operate in the pass game at a very efficient level. In fact, one of the most dominant Super Bowl victories of all time came in the 1984 season, January 1985, Stanford Stadium, 49ers playing the Super Bowl against the Miami Dolphins. Miami was favored to win that game. The 49ers were facing Dan Marino, who was coming off one of the most sensational quarterback seasons ever for the Dolphins. People thought, strong arm quarterback, Dolphins, unstoppable offense. They're going to head in there. And even though the 49ers are playing about 10 minutes from home, they were based in Redwood City at the time, and they're playing at Stanford, people thought that the Dolphins would have their way with the 49ers. What ended up happening was, San Francisco's defense was the best in the league that year, so they completely flummoxed Marino. But Joe Montana played perhaps the finest game of his career. There's so many excellent games in Joe Montana's career, and a lot of people are going to point at the Super Bowl where they beat the Broncos 55-10. But at least in the Walsh partnership, because Bill Walsh was no longer around for that 1989 season where they annihilated the Broncos in the Super Bowl. That was Elway and the Broncos, right? At least for the Walsh-Montana partnership, the very pinnacle might have been that Super Bowl against the Miami Dolphins. 38-16, the 49ers won. And the hallmark of that Super Bowl was Joe Montana, lethal precision throughout the entire game, with his most versatile weapon being Roger Craig, the running back. Running the football, catching the football out of the backfield. I mean, Craig was an absolute hammer. The 49ers bludgeoned the Dolphins, and the balance offensively is what kept Miami off balance throughout the whole game. They didn't know what the 49ers were going to run. I've watched the tape of that game, and we just did a nice interview with Greg Papa the other day. It's going to be coming out here over the course of the next couple of weeks. We talked about that Super Bowl at Stanford Stadium because we both like to go back and watch that game. And it was like this futuristic exhibition, what the NFL would become, right? And what the NFL is now, especially with what Kyle Shanahan is asking from Christian McCaffrey and his running backs. But 49ers would be able to sell run and they'd be able to sell pass convincingly. There she is. You want to say hi?
Hello.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Nothing better than water when you've been talking for 15 straight minutes without a stop. So anyway, they would be able to sell run. They'd be able to sell pass. And that was Lombardi herself, just in case you are uninitiated. She decided to bring the water in the middle of the show. When you're drinking some black coffee, you need to stay hydrated with water, especially if it's nice and sunny outside. So the Roger Craig was the first to go 1,000 receiving yards, 1,000 rushing yards in the same season. You fast forward to now, over 30 years later, and obviously Christian McCaffrey has gone 1,000, but you look at the yards per route run in 2024. This is despite the fact that Christian was obviously not at full strength for the vast majority of time that he was out there. Yards per route run is going to measure how well a running back is integrated in the receiving game. Christian McCaffrey, very, very well integrated in the receiving game. His first game back was against Tampa Bay, where they ran that wheel route that Brock Purdy got drilled on, and he just threw that rainbow up. And I think people need to realize how hard a catch like that is. Like Christian McCaffrey with a helmet on, first game back in a long time. That was his first game since the Super Bowl at the start of the calendar year. He's having to run under it like Willie Mays under that deep drive to center field off the bat of Vic Wirtz in the 1954 World Series. So McCaffrey, though, with a helmet, that's a little harder than having a hat that's just going to fly off. Looking under and making the catch. He's got such tremendous ball skills, such tremendous route running skills that the 49ers have this kind of efficiency. I mean, 1.6 yards per route run for a running back is wild. That's really good, especially if it was a down year. In any given year, depending on what's happening around him, I think Christian McCaffrey can actually give you 2 yards per route run, which is essentially unheard of for the running back position. And it leads the 49ers to be able to do so many different things offensively. I mean, the spacing, the Warriors are about to play in about an hour, right? We're going to get to see Warriors Mavericks. I guess Klay Thompson took his boat in. I think he still has his house in Tiburon, I'm guessing, and I still think he still has his boat in Tiburon. I mean, if I moved to Dallas, I would keep my house in Tiburon too, because I don't think I'd be able to stand living in Dallas for all too long. No offense to those of you in Dallas, but come on, you got to see some water. You have to have some comfortable climate, right? Especially in those hot summer months when the NBA is off after June. So Klay has kept the place in Tiburon and he's boating in. But I was talking about Steph Curry and how he creates space on the floor, created space for Klay Thompson. And just the mere respect, the ability to explode from any point, right? Curry could knock down the three from any point on the floor, made defenses think about him, shade toward him, just acknowledge him at all times. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey. Everybody else is open. I mean, the 49ers finished dead last in average yards per reception at the time of catch or incompletion this past season. Dead last in yards of separation. And I think so much of that had to do with the fact that Christian McCaffrey wasn't on the field. Christian wasn't there to help create that separation, be that gravitational force that pulls defenders toward him and away from everyone else. Yet, in the limited time that he was on the field, he was able to do this. And again, the full story of why he had to leave this year, injury-wise, I think paints a much more promising picture for how Christian McCaffrey is going to perform for the 49ers in 2025 than a lot of people assume. This is the post that we're talking about from Christian McCaffrey. Up on the internet, I believe that's through Instagram. Made that post yesterday. He's back in the gym, and I think that people are sleeping on the prime football that Christian McCaffrey is still set to deliver. I mean, just communicating with him, talking with him, he's very, very, very motivated. And a Hall of Fame player, which McCaffrey is going to be, it's one of the 3 all-time that's gone 1,000, but a Hall of Fame player with the level of motivation that he has. And I can also say that Christian McCaffrey was not pleased, was not happy at all with just the blatant mischaracterization of his Achilles recovery last year, with, how people were just making stuff up. This kind of stuff pissed him off. This kind of stuff fueled him. So you piss off a Hall of Fame caliber talent. And I say this as somebody who's known McCaffrey since 2014, who covered him at Stanford and saw just the video game-like performance. I mean, it was more impressive than the stuff that Reggie Bush did in college. What he did in that 2015 season. So I've covered him since then, and now moving to the 49ers, I can say that pissing Christian McCaffrey off is not going to be good for the rest of the league. So I'll go out and I'll predict it right now. I think that Christian McCaffrey is going to be right back in the Offensive Player of the Year race for the 49ers in 2025. And I think that's going to be a huge boost for San Francisco. If you want to take a look at the state of the 49ers running back position piece, we're going to have to also talk about this guy, Jordan Mason, here in a few minutes. But if you want to take a look at that, I'm going to send a link to Mike. It's going to be in the description. He's going to go ahead and toss it in there. This show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/gameon today. That's rocketmoney.com/gameon, rocketmoney.com/gameon. Rocket Money, always perfect to talk about them when we're dealing with 49ers salary cap discussions. Not today, no salary cap discussions, although Allan Lombardi made some money today. If somebody wants to sponsor him, he made some money. But he broke the 4-hour barrier in the marathon. One more look at Allan Lombardi breaking that 4-hour barrier. He's there in that neon-colored shirt, making sure everybody could see him at the Ventura Marathon, closing in on the 3-hour, 57-minute, 52-second finish. There it is at Ventura. So congratulations to my dad. That was huge. He's had a battle through some injuries, just like Christian McCaffrey. He's running like Christian McCaffrey there. I mean, that was some like real speed down the stretch run. I mean, I've been at a couple of these where he was like the Santa Rosa Marathon a few years ago, where by this point of the race, he's 68. So at this point of the race, it was tough. This is mile 26 plus at age 68. That's not bad. I mean, he's still moving. He's still getting both feet up off the ground. I would be passed out, paralyzed by probably mile 12. And I know I do these marathon swims. There's something different. It's harder on your joints, these marathon runs. So, yeah, that is breaking the 4-hour barrier. Congratulations to him on the day that we talk about Christian McCaffrey. And while we're at it, I know I put this in the title of the video, so we can go ahead and get this guy up on the screen. Everybody's talking about McCaffrey after the post yesterday. What are the 49ers going to do with Jordan Mason? And I know I talked about this from French Polynesia. We made a whole video about it a few days ago. It's better to just sit down in the studio and calmly go through the 49ers options with Jordan Mason. They can completely bypass the restricted free agent process because Mason is an RFA if they reach a deal with him before free agency hits or before he signs a tender. That is an option. Another option, if they can't agree to a deal with Jordan Mason, is to place a tender on him. The restricted free agent tenders are the first round tender, the second round tender, and the original round tender. The original round tender wouldn't net the 49ers any draft capital because Jordan Mason was an undrafted free agent. It depends on where the player was drafted. The tenders cost different amounts of money. So the first round tender is very pricey. It's probably close to $10 million, maybe even more. I know the second round tender, it's going to depend on the size of the salary cap, but it's going to be somewhere in the $7 million range. So you're offering him $7 million for one season, which is not cheap. But Jordan Mason shouldn't be a cheap player because Jordan Mason ran the football exceedingly well last season. If you don't believe me, I'm sure you've watched his tape, but if you don't believe me, this is a great way to illustrate it. Rushing yards over expectation per attempt. This is based on the NFL Next Gen Stats tracking data. It's on the x-axis. And then how often a guy runs against a stacked box is on the y-axis. I mean, it's Mason and Henry in the upper right. So, and then if you look at some of the yards after contact per attempt, Mason is toe-to-toe with guys like Derrick Henry in that regard as well. I get that he wasn't as good of or as efficient of a receiver in the pass game last year. Not the same type of rapport, probably route running ability as somebody like Christian McCaffrey, who is an all-timer in that regard. But Mason is still a damn good runner. So there will be demand for him in the market. And if the 49ers place that second-round tender on Mason, yes, that's $7 million, but it's $7 million for a really good runner, somebody that's been an awesome change of pace back for this team that I think definitely makes them better. It's just a matter of if it fits in the budget. That's why, if you bypass the RFA process for Jordan Mason, you can manage to find a lower cap hit. They bypassed the RFA process for Colton McKivitz and managed to find a lower cap hit of, I think, under $4 million. So for Jordan Mason, is he going to be amenable to bypassing that process? We'll see. Because I think as soon as you start dealing with performance like this, like really good performance like this, there is going to be interest for that player from the rest of the league. Now, the RFA process works in a way that if the 49ers do tender Jordan Mason, other teams will have a chance to beat their offer. And then the 49ers would have a chance to match any offer that potentially exceeds the one that Jordan Mason gets. Last year, we saw it with Brock Wright and the Detroit Lions with the 49ers, the tight end. The Lions tendered Wright at the original round level. The 49ers offered a contract, $12 million, I think over 3 years. The Lions decided to beat that offer or sign Wright to that offer. You could decide you have the right of first refusal. You could keep that player. So the Lions essentially used the 49ers to negotiate Brock Wright's contract. But at a certain level, the 49ers would have offered a certain amount. I'm sure the Lions would not have matched it. And if somebody, offers Jordan Mason a certain amount past a certain threshold, I'm sure the 49ers won't match it. They've got Christian McCaffrey coming back. They have Isaac Guerendo coming back. I mean, Guerendo, the way he caught the ball last season, that fits a lot better into what the 49ers are trying to run. So there's part of this that does suggest that Mason is a luxury weapon, but holy crap, what a luxury weapon this is. Somebody that's in the upper right of this, right by Derrick Henry. So the 49ers definitely will be at their best if they can get Jordan Mason back into the fold. That's how good of a runner he is. They definitely also will be at their best if this guy right here is back to 2023 form, which I think is much more possible than a lot of people are letting on, just based on the details of that entire situation. So keep an eye on Christian McCaffrey this offseason. Should be a whole heck of a lot of fun to track him with some motivation. A pissed off Christian McCaffrey heading into this 2025 season. Let's move this to a 49ers Q&A. I'm ready for all your good questions. Let's answer a few of them, and then we can watch some Warriors this afternoon. They're a lot more exciting now. Jimmy Butler. I mean, McCaffrey was a trade acquisition, right? Jimmy Butler, trade acquisition, has made the Warriors more watchable. Speaking of that, I don't know if you guys caught this the other day, but I headed to Chase Center. They call it Thrive City next to Chase Center. This is going to be a great spot to watch 49ers games. This is that new sports bar. It's called Splash at Thrive City. They've got that big curved screen. It curves at the very end. I get a better shot of it later. Next time I go, I'll capture some of the food. There's everything from smash burgers to sushi, some good cocktails, nothing too crazy. You don't want anything too fancy when you're just trying to watch football or basketball. But I know the Warriors playing a little bit, and I can't wait to see the 49ers. Well, I guess I'll never see the 49ers play here since I'm at all the games. But maybe at some point, maybe for a preseason game or something. Oh, that's not any fun. It's the preseason. But if you look at their memorabilia, you saw the Marlowe, Barry Bonds jerseys. They've got some They've got some 49er stuff there. Look, Jerry Rice, Clay Thompson, speaking of him, and there's Joe Montana. It was a sweet spot. I had fun checking it out. Christopher Schwab says he's never been a huge fan of advanced analytics. Sometimes it goes a bit too far. He's the first running back to have more than 5.2 yards per carry on a Sunday evening past 3 p.m. Yeah, I mean, that goes too far for me. It's all context, right? I mean, you have to find the analytics that actually fit the situation. You have to be smart. You can't just like look at every single number. That's why stats like EPA are so good, is because they fit a lot under one hood. They give you a better idea of a player's performance than a simple analytic like passing yards. Something like EPA or DVOA is going to be better. But yeah, I really don't care who has more than 5.2 yards per carry on a Sunday evening past 3 p.m. It's not 3 p.m. yet. Maybe in a couple hours I will care about that, but at this point I don't, and I don't plan on caring about such details. So I think it's very, very situation dependent. Got a question from Mike. Hearing uncertainty of Trent Williams' future. Why? There's no uncertainty. Trent's coming back next year. Trent was hurt. He had the bone bruise in his ankle. He wants to play till he's 40. He's not anywhere near there. Trent Williams and I are the same age. We're both 36 years old. I don't know why you would be uncertain about Trent Williams' future other than you're listening to irrelevant YouTube channels too much, because people just throw that rumor up against the wall every single offseason, and there is no basis to it. Trent said when he re-signed, which was right before this past season, that he wanted to play till 40, and he was still playing at a high level this past season, but it was dealing with a really problematic bruise in one of the joints. It sounded really painful, so they shut him down for the season. What's my opinion on the home opener for Saleh? You feel like the stadium's going to roar? I assume it will. I don't know why it wouldn't. Robert Saleh roars himself on the sideline. The guy gets as fired up as anybody. The 49ers defense makes some big plays. Well, then everybody will hear from Robert Saleh. You'll definitely see Saleh going crazy on the sideline. I think that whole energy level that Saleh gave the 49ers defense, that then D'Amico Ryans was able to transfer into the 49ers defense, I think that's something that Kyle Shanahan has really missed. And I think that Robert Saleh should be able to give it to them moving forward. Looking for your very good questions. Let's go. 2025 breakout player. That's a good question. I think somebody like Dominic Pooney already was a breakout player, right? Malik Mustafa, Renardo Green. Might be a draftee. Why don't we open up the roster? I think it's a good time. You know, what we have coming soon is the build your own roster. You guys get a little sneak tease of that. That'll be out within the next few days. It always comes out this time of the year before free agency. For now, I could show you my depth chart and we could pick our breakout player for this 2025 season. Let's get this up here. Who's it going to be? Isaac Guerendo? Really could be Isaac Guerendo. Now, the question is, breakout is such a subjective term. Has he already broken out? Or is Guerendo still a little bit under the radar? I think those who watch this closely would say that he somewhat has. Now, Ricky Pearsall had 18 targets over the course of the past 2 games. Ricky Pearsall was playing as a top-tier receiver to finish the season. Remember that game against Detroit where he had that really pretty catch up against the sideline? One-handed catch. So, I mean, if you're looking at the entire season stats and you hadn't watched any games, you'd think that, okay, Ricky Pearsall does something this next year. That could be a breakout for him. But I think that he's already broken out in a way. Along the line, Nick Zakelj interests me because he pass protected really well. Hadn't been a good run blocker, hadn't scored well there, but he pass protected really well during his chance at the end of the season. Does he get an opportunity to fill in there? Hennessy and Drake Nugent, the two backup centers, do they have an opportunity for the 49ers? How about linebacker? There are going to be some opportunities there. Does Tatum Bethune take another step? And then at corner, they only have 3 under contract right now, excluding Chase Lucas, who I don't project to make the roster, the 53. But Darrell Luter Jr. is going to have his opportunity. And they're going to sign more corners. They're going to draft more corners. They've got to build out this room. But don't sleep on Darrell Luter Jr., who has yet to deliver or have a defensive opportunity. It's been special teams so far for him, and then he got hurt late last season. You take Travis Hunter as a special teams specialist? Yeah, well, he's going to be going high up in the draft, though. So, but this is also a guy that can play offense and defense, as we saw in college. Speaking of Chase Lucas, you know, he's a guy on the practice squad. He's a DB. I have him down here on the depth chart, who plays receiver and DB for the scout team. So he plays both ways for the scout team. He's a practice squad guy for the 49ers last year. I talked to Chase about it in the locker room one time. He's like, yeah, I'm like the Travis Hunter of the 49ers because he plays both ways. It's going to be hard to pick up somebody like Travis Hunter with where the 49ers are. They're not quite at the elite tier of picks. And obviously, even if you were, there's so many other players you can go for. The probability of getting a singular guy, unless you're picking number 1 and Andrew Luck is in the draft, well, the probability of getting a singular player is relatively low. And I think people need to imprint that into their minds when they have these draft crushes. I mean, it's a total crapshoot, and it's not really productive to just say, I love this guy, and I hope this guy becomes a 49er. You got to look at this in the totality of things and really consider it to be throwing a bunch of darts up against the wall and hoping that something will stick. How many linemen do the 49ers draft? They'll draft as many linemen as there are linemen who are the best player available when the 49ers are on the clock. I don't know. How many run plays are they going to call in the game 3 months from now? I can't possibly predict that. So we're going to talk about all the prospects here for the next few months. We're going to be diligent about how the 49ers are set up roster-wise, especially after free agency ends and that gap between free agency and the draft. But beyond that, I mean, the 49ers don't even know. 49ers don't know who's going to be available, which way they're going to go, who's going to call regarding a trade. You have to be on your toes entering the draft. You have to be ready to be flexible. You can't preset anything, especially a couple months out. Do I think the 49ers will get Max Crosby or Myles Garrett? I don't think they're going to get either of the two. I think there's a chance they get Garrett. The Browns have to want to trade him, and I don't think the Browns are wise enough at this point. I think they're just trying to cover themselves for the short term. There's no indication that the Raiders want to trade Max Crosby. I do know that the 49ers will kick the tires on everything. They have in the past. They've been one of the most aggressive teams in all of football under Shanahan and Lynch. They spent all that capital on McCaffrey. We're talking about him today. They wanted to trade for Mack. They even gave a bigger offer to the Raiders for Mack in 2018. Khalil Mack, top edge rusher in the game at that time, but the Raiders didn't want to trade with him. And that might complicate a Max Crosby transaction for San Francisco. Khalil Mack is scheduled to be a free agent, though. Maybe an easier option for the 49ers, even though he's obviously, 34 years old now. So I think he turned 34 yesterday, February 22nd. So that might be an easier option to attain because you'd actually have to have the Cleveland Browns or the Las Vegas Raiders want to trade one of those two players for that to happen. I will not shave my chest if the 49ers win the Super Bowl. I will swim to Alcatraz or from Alcatraz in February without a wetsuit, and we'll do a live stream. That's the deal. I'm not going to alter that. I'm not going to let you alter that deal. I need this to stay warm if I'm not going to be wearing a wetsuit. That's going to be happening with Mike on the boat. Was Lombardi herself going to be on the boat? I'm not sure, but it would be like the day of the 49ers parade. That was what we hooked up. This was an idea that came up a couple of years ago. We were going to do it last year, but then they lost in overtime. So, yeah. And you guys also would get to see the back of the number 17 jersey, which actually hadn't been on a show in a long time. You see the back of that one. That's Shane Leckler on that side. That's Frank Gore. And it's a little bit of a story. Everybody loves a Frank Gore jersey whenever they see one, so that's always a winning choice. But this channel, we founded this channel in 2021, which is the number of Frank Gore. 16, well, that's just Joe Montana. That has nothing to do when we started the channel. But 2021 is when this channel started. So the Frank Gore jersey is perfect. All right, guys, it's been good. It's been really good. Really appreciate everybody joining the show today. We have a lot of viewers, especially for Sunday afternoon. Warriors coming up in about 40 minutes, so go watch some basketball in peace this afternoon. Watch Jimmy Butler, see what Golden State can do with him on the team. I think they're 4-1 ever since he joined. Maybe this is gonna be like a CMC like impact for the Warriors. And obviously, we can congratulate the man of the hour one more time. There was breaking news. And what was breaking was the 4-hour barrier in the marathon. Allan Lombardi got it done. That's my dad. He's 68, and this was him finishing the Ventura Marathon. He is in that neon shirt at 68, breaks the 4-hour barrier for the first time in his running career. He's now run a handful of these marathons, and I think at this point, we can give him a call because he has his breath back. So we're going to go ahead and give Allan Lombardi a call of congratulations. Everybody congratulate him in the comments section. Hell of an accomplishment. There's your Christian McCaffrey 49ers update as well. He was back working out. Mark my words, Christian McCaffrey is going to have a huge 2025 season. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you a little bit later today.